This is part of an ongoing series of classes that we have been calling Ask a Witch. This class is being taught from our perspectives, and if possible, anyone else who ends up stepping up to answer a question we can't answer. Unlike our other courses, which are presented as much as possible from an interfaith and intercultural perspective, we try and teach as many different views on something as possible. This class is very personal. We answer this from our perspective, the way that we would do, the way that we would approach a problem, and that's just how these classes work. So keep that in mind. We will always try and say if something is beyond the scope of this class or if we don't know the answer. And I think that's about everything. We were sent a bunch of questions, and we have some left over from last class, so I'm very excited to get started.
And this one is from Karen, who is in chat. Question that may have to wait till next week. What difference does it make to do a simple ritual and a complicated ritual? Are there certain things that can only be done with a complicated ritual? Ha ha ha, this one's fun.
Okay, so Ian's going to answer, and then I'm going to answer, and then we'll see if any other person wants to answer.
Wants to put in 2 cents on this. My answer is, there is absolutely nothing that you can do with a complicated ritual that you cannot do with a simple ritual or even no ritual at all, except have a complicated ritual. Now, if what you are going for, and we know people like this, is performative public magic with a big fancy ritual, and the goal is to provide essentially a public magic seeming experience for everyone who is there who may not be able to notice what you're doing if you don't make it big and flashy and dramatic, then sure, you want a big complicated ritual. Likewise, if you personally, if you're being a Grimoire Purist, meaning you are following the exact steps written down in an old spell book, then you're probably going to wind up doing a complicated ritual.
It's probably going to be expensive, too.
It's probably going to be an expensive ritual.
Did you ever find the normal horn?
Yes!
And if doing a big ritual helps you personally get into the right headspace to feel more powerful or more in tune with what you're doing, go ahead and do it. It can help. That's my 2 cents before I run off to D6.
Okay. Hi, I get to try and do the chat and answer the questions. I can do that. Alrighty. So, my answer doesn't vary all that much from Ian's. I don't necessarily think that there is anything that you can do with a big fancy ritual that you cannot do without one. I will add that one of the reasons to do a big fancy ritual, now Ian said it's because you want to demonstrate the big fancy ritual and have this be a social thing wherein you are drawing everyone's attention, making sure that they feel like they have a genuine experience, make sure that they have a social experience that makes them feel, powerful and magical and like they've had this life-changing event. And again, the Grimoire Purist, but also, if doing a big fancy ritual makes you feel you have accomplished something, if you need the candles and the herbs and the chanting and the circle to feel as though you've done something, then yeah. I will also say that cunning and clever work have an interesting perspective on ritual versus no ritual for one of 3 reasons. One, we believe that it's kind of like ingredients. That when you are preparing a magical working, you have your ingredients. Now, you could have all those ingredients come from you. Find the place in you that echoes everything that you would put together with them. Or you can have those ingredients and then not have to find the echo of those powers in you. So it's a way of giving yourself assistance. 2, it's a way of making sure that the person you're doing or working for sees that something has been done, understands that something has been done, and doesn't just go, why is this person standing there with their hands over me? And 3, sometimes the ingredients that are used in a ritual actually do have psychoactive or entheogenic properties, or psychological properties, or they in some way affect the biological component of magic. So a reason to do a ritual to do your world crossing would be because that's when you get the ointment smeared on you that makes the world crossing possible. Whereas if you leave out that step, you can lay there and attempt it without it and possibly succeed, but it's certainly much easier if you have the fairy. Literally Ferry. It's the fairy that gets you there. Now, I'm not going to say there's anywhere I've been carried with a drug that I couldn't have potentially gotten there on my own via extensive meditation.
But it can
But
help.
it helps.
Right.
So those are some other reasons to consider ritual.
I thought of one more.
Oh, okay.
Prepayment. This is where you talk about concepts like equivalent exchange, where the amount of energy you put into what you're doing is directly proportional to what you get out of what you're doing. And there's an idea that you can put in some of that energy in installments, basically, by the work that you do preparing the ingredients
So you're
in
using
the
sort
space.
of the alchemist perspective.
Where the energy that you put into the ingredients that you're going to burn as you harvest them and prepare them, and the energy that you put into cleaning into getting the space ready and things like that are basically prepayments on the total energy you're going to expend in the ritual, rather than having to put it all in.
This is the idea
writing.
that if you hand hew a wand, if you take those steps to
Yeah.
hand hew. Okay. I
So-
will add onto that that if you work with the gods specifically, if you work with beings outside of you, they may sometimes. So if what you are attempting to do magically is
They may like the show of respect.
is get a god to do something for you, many gods from many different pantheons demand the ritual. So in some cases, that would be an example of I can't do this without the ritual. I cannot get this god to cooperate without the ritual. But I firmly believe you could probably do whatever you wanted to ask the god for without the ritual to get the god.
Or you can get the god using the Tibetan method of summoning.
Yeah,
Don't.
just call their name over and over and over again until they are annoyed into showing up. I never do that. What? Does the resident Satanist want to give any? Okay.
You've
covered all of it.
We
right.
had we had a follow-up question to that from Ryder Gray. Do you think the whole big ritual thing is sometimes gatekeeping? Like, if you believe it has to be complicated, then you can keep people who are still learning all this from doing the work?
Yes.
Yes, you are dead correct. That is.
It's also a way of
thing.
keeping certain people in power, because have you noticed that the tendency in the spiritual community for whoever has the group has the backyard? Whoever has a backyard or a big ritual space, the money for the ritual tools, can set up the fancy altar, can host everyone around their fire pit. That's who winds up in charge. And so it ends up being, generally, not always, but generally affluent, classist, ableist, white people.
There's all caps agreement in chat. Old European magic, yeah, like all the rich aristocrats who put out their work. Yes, exactly.
Yes. They definitely created a system of magic that benefited from them having the wealth, having the space, and that continues to this day. And we all end up showing up at the house of the person who has the room. And this often means that they wind up doing really unhealthy, really toxic things in the community,
exactly who you're
and
thinking
no
of.
one's willing to sever ties because, oh no, then
Actually,
we
more
won't
like
have a ritual
4
space.
people
I know
you're thinking
4
of.
people out here that I'm thinking of. 4 different groups that I'm
I feel
thinking of.
really good about having never held rehearsal at my house now.
Yeah. Like, okay.
Right.
Next question.
This is something that someone said in chat that I actually want to follow up on. This was Kim in chat, and I'm dropping the second name, Sacred I guess. Follow up on complicated rituals. Grimoire magic has an astrological basis for magic. Certain days and hours are right to perform rituals. Herbs and stones, gods and angels are associated with planets. A lot of what makes ritual magic complicated is the system of correspondences behind it, and the astrology is a basis for magic. Yes, in particular...
In certain grimoires.
In particular, that is in certain grimoires, especially the Catholic ones. This is because the Catholic-inspired grimoires firmly believed that what you were doing was of the devil, and that you had to do all of this stuff to keep from being damned for doing it, so you were still holy while you did things of the devil. And so they made it complicated.
And they essentially said, I'm subduing these natural forces and placing them under my dominion through the power of God and in the service of the, holy empire, and therefore it's okay.
And I will know to do this based on these astrological signs, which actually gets into the alchemic correspondences.
And also the idea that the heavens bowed to God's will and would essentially be in certain alignments to permit certain magical actions to happen based on the will of Yahweh.
Right.
Now, there are grimoires that are, I hate that term. There are books of ceremonial magic.
There are surviving ceremonial magical texts.
Right, including Egyptian ones that had very different associations and very different ideas behind why you use certain plants. For example, there are Egyptian spells that instructed you to use certain incenses because they were literally considered to be the blood and sweat of the gods. And so you were using these and burning these as a way of forcing a god to take a body that you could perceive and interact with because you were giving of them their own flesh and blood. So you get a very different idea. And one of the tendencies in ceremonial magic is to take from something like Egypt, like Tibet, like yoga, like Tantra, and go, we're going to take the elements we like the good, sweet smelling, expensive stuff, and completely strip it of social context, and then tell everyone that these herbs mean these things, which then, uphold our power structures and uphold our ideas of magic.
Spoiler for Tuesday's class on burnt offerings.
Oh no, I already taught that one.
I thought you didn't get into the Catholic one yet.
Oh, I didn't get into the Catholic
spoilers
one. Oh,
for
I thought you were talking about
No.
the Egyptian.
No, I'm talking about what you just said with cultural colonialism.
Well, they did cultural colonialism. The Western ceremonial magicians took things like the incenses of Egypt and said these are our sacred incenses for these reasons, and we're going to kill a bunch of Egyptians to get these, and then we're going to say that it means this. And then we're going to tell everyone that we've incorporated Egyptian magic into the Western ceremonial magic, sans context. And then to this day, right now, in history, you meet people who practice Western ceremonial magic who'll be like, well, it's not like you can just ask the Egyptian polytheists. They don't exist anymore. And it's like,
some of them still do.
Actually, yeah, they do. They're being persecuted and killed, but they do exist, and you could just ask them, and the answer is always no.
As far as so the most common system that you will see now is the one that is based on the Western alchemic tradition that divides things into planetary hours and houses of influence, and the symbolism of the planet for both the hour, the day of the week, and the point where you are in the solar cycle the influence is based on which stage of the alchemic process it corresponds to. And so,
And it actually comes directly down from the Persian sorcerers.
and then you want
First
to
the
do,
Persian and then the Roman.
and then you want to prepare an ingredient in the hour on the day that is appropriate for the function that fulfills in your ritual. So there, if you want to, you can go ahead and add the layers of correspondence to have more focused intention, particularly with the prepayment model that I was talking about. But it's not necessary,
Something I want to touch
and
on
it's not
here.
gonna and it's not gonna be particularly helpful to you if you're doing it because someone said you should do it that way, rather than because you're focusing on this is the time for something that results in dissolution, and this is going to be what is providing dissolution in the context of this ritual, for example.
Something
Go
to be
ahead.
aware of with this this structure of magic is that this was one of the reasons why alchemists and ceremonial magicians could hold up to kings and be like, well, the spell didn't work obviously because in the quarter hour on this day, we used this kind of gold and really I needed this kind of gold. So, keep paying me money and not killing me for practicing magic, and keep paying for all of my materials and all of my help because all I did was just get it a little bit wrong. And this was a known thing that these ceremonial magicians would essentially excuse a spell not correctly functioning because something was just a little bit wrong. And this got to be so pervasive that there became this whole idea of magic as being associated with these con artists like Edward Kelly and John Dee, who were taking advantage of people in order to say, we will be able to make you immortal, we will be able to give you gold, we will be able to empower your armies to defeat your enemies. You just need to understand that this is very delicate magic that is, if you get one grain of sand off, it won't work right, and you need to understand that I'm a genius, and etc., etc. And these people got money and power while the midwives and the beer brewers were being exterminated. So I have a little bit of I've studied it extensively, but it's never going to be for me.
Yeah.